Okay, it's Movember, day 9. It's a Monday here. I've just done a breaking free group tonight, so for my video on day 9, I'm going to read this little book, which is by John Eldredge. Now, I've been turned on to John Eldredge's work now for a few years. Christian ministry, men's ministry. His wife Stacey has a women's ministry, and together it's now known as Wild at Heart, but was called Ransomed Heart. At the moment, COVID-19 has got the Ransomed Heart membership for free. It's a fantastic resource. John is a acclaimed author. Wild at Heart was his probably most famous book, but Getting Your Life Back was his recent one. Fantastic read. And Morgan Schneider, another one of the teams there from Become Good Soil, has written To Become a King, which has got a whole lot. Everything they do has video and all sorts of group resources. This one tonight, which I haven't read all the way through, so I'm looking forward to it myself. It is called You Have What It Takes, What Every Father Needs to Know. The secret to boys. Every little boy is asking one basic question. You notice it in nearly everything he does. Little boys love adventure. Just the other day, my wife was having a cup of coffee in the kitchen when she saw, out of the corner of her eye, something fly out the second-story window. She investigated and found a rope made of bed sheets hanging from the boys' bedroom window. They had stripped their beds, knotted the sheets together, and anchored the rope to their bunk beds and were rappelling down the side of the house. I have 3 boys under 9. I can see this happening. Batman style. Just a typical Saturday morning in a house of boys. Give a little boy a bicycle, it is not enough that he learns to ride it. Of course not. As soon as the training wheels are off, no sooner, he's seeing how fast it can go. Riding with no hands, jumping it off the curb, making skid marks on the sidewalk, racing against all corners. Noises go with it too. Noises that no one needs to teach a boy. He just knows how to make them. Loud engine noises and speedy whooshing noises and screeching, crashing noises, and a soundtrack to go with it all. That is no mere bike he's riding, and he is no mere boy. He's a motorcycle racer, a fighter pilot, a starship captain. Look at the stories boys love, the games they play. They are full of battle and adventure and danger. They love to build things and then blow them up. They love to jump off stuff. What does a boy wear if you let him wear what he wants to wear? Let him out of his school clothes and his Sunday school togs, and in that moment he'll be decked out in camouflage, army style, or dressed up as a cowboy, a fireman, a superhero, a Jedi Knight, with a bath towel wrapped around him and a stern look in his eye. Every boy wants to be a hero. Every boy wants to be powerful. He wants to be dangerous, and he wants to know, do I have what it takes? That's the question every boy is asking. Do I have what it takes? And when he grows a bit older, it turns to fast cars, the louder the better, computer games of battle and adventure, and making the sports team. He wants to hit the home run in the bottom of the ninth. He wants to make a slam dunk just before the buzzer sounds. If he's more academically inclined, well then he wants to win win at chess. He wants to ace the test. He wants to come out on top. He wants to prove himself. And all through those years, when he's riding his bike with no hands and trying to look cool and doing all those other things that boys do, he's looking to impress you. Because every boy shares the same basic question, do I have what it takes? And every boy looks to his dad to the answer. The secret to girls. Every little girl is asking one basic question too, but it's a very different question. You can observe it there in nearly everything she does. Little girls typically don't invent games where bloodshed is a prerequisite for having fun, where large numbers of people die as a regular part of the routine. On the other hand, boys don't love to brush each other's hair. They don't go to tea parties unless they are dragged into them by their sisters, sitting down over a make-believe china, being very polite and having and grown-up conversations make the party an entirely feminine affair. It's all part of the relational games that girls create. Boys may have invented hockey, but little girls invented games like Wedding Day and Mummies and Daddies and Rescue the Princess. You don't have to teach them to do it. It comes naturally. It's part of their design. This is not to say that girls dislike adventure. They love to climb trees and make mud pies and all that. Many girls love to play sports, and there is something profoundly different between little boys and little girls. Watch them on a rainy day, trapped inside the house. Boys make up games like Terrorize the Cat and Urban Commando. Girls cuddle and care for their favourite doll and stuffed animal, and they dress up the family puppy. Speaking of dress up, that was a feminine creation as well. Give a group of girls a chest of gowns and shoes and mum's costume jewellery, and they are captured for hours playing princesses or movie stars or generally being beautiful. For her question is very different from that of her brothers. Every little girl wants to know, am I lovely? And when she grows a bit older, she talks on the phone for hours and wants to know who is dating whom. While the guy is clueless about what to wear to the prom, it is a very big deal for a young woman. She watches shows about relationships, pores over fashion magazines and bridal magazines, and loves to get cards and flowers from a secret admirer. Why are flowers such a big deal for women? I have been sent flowers once in my life and I thought it was weird, but my wife loves to get flowers. Have you ever wondered why? Because of what it says. I'm thinking of you. I delight in you. All through those years when she's dressing up and doing shows for you and playing princess and trying to look beautiful and shedding tears over the fact that she might not be, she is trying to capture your attention. She wants to know, am I lovely? That's the question every girl is asking, and she looks to her dad to answer it. What a father needs to do. I'm going to make fathering very simple. Answer your child's question. Answer, yes, you have what it takes, or yes, you are lovely. Answer it 1,000 times in 1,000 ways over the course of your son or daughter's life, and you will have done your job. You will have hit a home run. You don't need a PhD in child psychology to be a dad. It isn't rocket science. Understand what a little boy and a little girl need to hear from their dad. Understand each one's question, then answer it intentionally, answer it with love, and you will have offered the best a father can give. Oh, and it is not just little boys and girls either. Your son or daughter, no matter how old, will always want and need to hear those words from you. To a son, you have what it takes, you're a man. To a daughter, you are lovely or worth fighting for. This will remain true for the rest of each one's life. The most powerful man in the world. Just the other day, my 10-year-old son, Luke, snuggled up to me after dinner as I was reading in my chair, and he said, with big eyes and a sweet face, Dad, can I ask you a question? I knew he was after something. Cookies, maybe, or permission to run down to a friend's house. Sure, I said. What's up? Dad, can I have a chainsaw? The things these boys come up with, it cracks me up. He was dead serious, by the way. You understand, we all, as men, pretty much want the same thing. We want power. We want to have an impact. We want to leave our mark on the world. A boy with a chainsaw is a powerful thing. Just imagine all he could do. In a short time, there wouldn't be a tree left standing in the entire neighborhood, which, of course, is why I do not give him one. A 10-year-old with a chainsaw is more powerful than he ought to be. But I understand the desire. It's essential to the masculine nature. Boys who play baseball don't want to strike out. They want to hit the ball hard. They want to knock it over the fence. My boys love to wrestle with me, but they don't simply want to wrestle. They want to pin me. They want to be on top. This is true for every man. This is what's behind men and their fascination with fast cars or power tools or politics. It's about power. When they grow up, they wear power ties and have power lunches. A man may take it in the wrong direction sometimes, but the bottom line is a man needs to know he's having an impact. Or think of it this way. What's your worst fear as a man? Isn't it some version of failure? To royally blow it, to really screw things up, lose your job, drive your company into bankruptcy, wind up pushing a shopping cart down the street. If you're a doctor, you fear misdiagnosing a patient's fatal disease. If you're an attorney, you fear losing the big case. But all those things in some way prove that you don't have what it takes. Not so for women. A woman's worst fear is abandonment. Most women survive a career setback that would send men into a tailspin. Failure doesn't seem to matter as much because a woman fears that she won't be loved. It shouts to the world she wasn't worth pursuing, she wasn't worth fighting for. But for men, the dog at our heels is failure. We need to know that our lives mattered, that when the time came, when we had when the time came, we had what was needed. We came through. There was something powerful about our lives. So let me say this as clearly as I can to you. Dad are the most powerful man. Oh, sorry. Please let me say this clearly as I can. You, Dad, are the most powerful man in the world, at least in their world. Your children are looking to you to answer the deep question of their lives. How you handle their hearts will shape them for the rest of their lives. Never forget that no one is as powerful as you are in the lives of your sons and daughters. Please note that I'm not saying mum is unimportant, not at all. Mum teaches us unconditional love and she teaches us about mercy. She is the comforter. When boys or girls want to do something adventurous, they don't ask mum, they ask dad. But when they skin their knees or they cut their fingers, when they get their feelings hurt, who do they run to? Mum, of course. Every wounded soldier in the battlefield are known to cry out for their mothers in their last moments. Mother is love and tenderness and mercy. She is a picture of the heart of God. But identity, especially gender identity, is bestowed to the father. A boy learns if he is a man, if he has what it takes from his dad. A girl learns she is worth pursuing if she is lovely from her dad. That's just the way God has set the whole thing up. This power he has given to you. The voice of the father. On a warm August afternoon several years ago, my boys and I were rock climbing in a place called the Garden of the Gods near our home. We all love to climb, and our love for it goes beyond the adventure. There's something about facing a wall of rock, accepting its challenge, and mastering it that calls you out, tests and affirms what you are made of. Besides, the boys are going to climb everything anyway, the refrigerator, the banister, the furniture, so we may as well take it outside. My oldest son, Sam, went first. He was about 8 years old at the time. Things were going well until he hit a bit of an overhang, which, even though you're roped in, makes you feel exposed and more than a little vulnerable. So I helped him up the overhang with a bit of a boost, and on he went with greater speed and confidence. Way to go, Sam. You're looking good. That's it. Nice move. Way to go, Sam. You're a wild man. He finished the climb, and as he walked down from the back side, I began to clip in his brother. 10 or 15 minutes passed, and the story was forgotten to me, but not to Sam. While I was coaching his brother up the rock, Sam sort of sidled up beside me and in a quiet voice asked, "Dad, did you really think I was a wild man up there?" Miss that moment and you'll miss a boy's heart forever. It's not a question, it's the question. The one every boy's longing to ask. Do I have what it takes? Am I powerful? Until a man knows he is a man, he will forever be trying to prove he is one, while at the same time he'll shrink from anything that might reveal he is not. Most men live their lives haunted by the question or debilitated by the answer they've been given. I spent a few days this fall with a very successful man I'll call Peter. He was hosting me for a conference on the East Coast, and when Peter picked me up at the airport, he was driving a new Land Rover and all the whistles and bells. Nice car, I thought. This guy's doing well. The next day we drove around in his BMW. Peter lived in the largest house in town. He had not inherited any of his wealth. He worked for every dime. He loved Formula One racing and fly fishing for salmon in Nova Scotia, and I genuinely liked him. Now here's a man, I said to myself. Yet there was something missing. You'd think a guy like that would be confident, self-assured and centered. And, of course, he seemed that way at first. But as we spent time together, I found him to be hesitant. He had all the appearances of masculinity, but none of it felt as though it was coming from the true center. After several hours of conversation, he admitted he was coming to a revelation. I lost my father earlier this year to cancer, but I did not cry when he died. You see, we were never really close. Ah, yes, I knew what was coming next. All these years knocking myself out to get ahead, I wasn't even enjoying myself. What was it for? I see now I was trying to win my father's approval. A long, sad silence. Then Peter, quietly, through tears. It never worked. He never heard what he so desperately needed to hear from his dad. You see, it's the father who is designed to answer that core question. The same holds true for women. Give your little girl a new dress and a pair of shoes, and what will she do? It is enough that she admires herself in the mirror. Is it enough she admires herself in the mirror? No. In a flash, she'll be out there in the living room swirling and twirling in front of a daddy. She wants his attention. Am I lovely, Daddy? Am I captivating? Do you think I'm worth fighting for? My good friend Craig just gave his oldest daughter to be married to a fine young man. He told me afterwards that the walk down the aisle with his daughter on his arm was the most beautiful and the most difficult moment of his life. He also was honoured to say a few words to the bride and groom during the ceremony. As they stood there before him, the young man in the black tuxedo standing tall and just a little nervous, the young woman by his side looking more beautiful than she ever has, and with a touch of apprehension in her eyes, her father spoke. He talked about her years growing up and the things that made her such a special daughter. He spoke as a father. He paused, and with pride in his voice and love on his face, Craig said to her, "Sweetheart, you are a beautiful woman." Every woman in that church had tears in her eyes. The women were undone. Those were the very words each of them longed to hear from her father. And not just once, but thousands of times in thousands of different ways over the course of her life. You are lovely. When a young woman hasn't heard this from her father, 9 times out of 10, she turns to a young man to try and get the answer to a question. It's hard to be holy and passionate, a young woman confessed to me. She is a sincerely committed follower of Christ. She's also a bit more vulnerable to the boys than she'd like to be. It seems that the only way Cindy can keep from chasing after sexual intimacy with a man is to bury herself in grad school, but it doesn't seem to make the longing go away, and she soon finds herself leaving the books for another compromising situation. Why can't I get beyond this? She asked. I'm praying and reading my Bible every day, but I still fall. What are you looking for? I asked in return. We sat in silence for a few minutes. I really don't know. Her dad was not abusive, at least not in the way that you would seem obvious. He was simply busy and unavailable. When he did give her his attention, it was always with a high standard of achievement. How are your grades? That's not what she needed to hear. She didn't want a test. She wanted to be pursued by him. How is your heart? Is what she longed to hear. Research data shows that sexual promiscuity among teenage girls is almost always related to an absent father, and I don't necessarily mean physically absent. It might be the absent. He might be at home, but emotionally withdrawn from his daughter. If he starves her for his words, his delight, his attention, she will look for those things elsewhere. All this is to say that it is your voice, my friend and fellow dad, that is the most powerful voice in the world in the lives of your children. No one will have the impact on them that you will have, but isn't that what you've always wanted? To be powerful, to be to have an eternal impact. You do. When it comes to what they need and what you can offer them, you have what it takes. You are the man. The answer to your question. Now, it is a simple fact of life that we cannot give something we don't have. Although you may begin to see the weight of your life upon your son and daughter, at the same time you may sense a lingering doubt of fear or sense of failure inside, because you, too, had a question growing up. You were once a boy and a young man, wondering if you had what it takes. What did your dad answer your question? How did your dad answer your question? What was his message to you about you as a man? Whether you are aware of it or not, that answer has shaped you into the man you are today. Dave still remembers the day he was wounded by his father. His parents were having an argument in the kitchen, and his father was verbally abusing his mother. Dave took his mum's side, and his father exploded. I don't remember all that was said, but I do remember his last words. "You are such a mama's boy," he yelled at me, and then he walked outside. Perhaps if Dave had a strong relationship with his dad most of the time, a wound like that might be lessened. healed later with words of love. But the blow came after years of distance between them. Dave's father was often gone from morning till night with his own business, so they rarely spent time together. What is more, Dave felt a lingering disappointment from his dad. He wasn't a star athlete, which he knew his dad valued highly. He had a spiritual hunger and often attended church, which his dad did not value. Those words fell like a final blow, a death sentence. How I wish it were a rare case, but I am deeply sorry to say I've heard countless stories like it. There's a young boy named Charles who loved to play the piano, but his father and brothers were jocks. One day they came back from the gym to find him at the keyboard, and who knows what else had built up years of scorn and contempt in his father's soul. But his son received both barrels. You are such a faggot. It was devastating, and Charles never played the piano again. In the case of violent father, the boy's question is answered in a devastating way. Do I have what it takes? Am I a man, Papa? No, you're a mama's boy, an idiot, a faggot, a loser. Those are defining sentences that shape a man's life. The assault wounds are like a shotgun blast to the chest. This can get unspeakably evil when it involves physical, sexual, and verbal abuse carried on for years. Without some kind of help, many men never recover. Other fathers give a wound merely by their silence. They are present yet absent to their sons. Their silence is deafening. My father was in many ways a good man. He introduced me to the West. He taught me to fish and to camp. I still remember the fried egg sandwiches we made for dinner. But like so many men of his era, my father had never faced the issues of his own wounds, and he fell to drinking when his life began to take a downhill turn. I was about 11 or 12 at the time, a very critical age in the masculine journey, the age when the question really begins to surface. At the very moment when I was desperately wondering what it meant to be a man, whether I had what it took, my father checked out, was silent. He had a workshop out back attached to the garage, and he spent hours out there reading, doing crossword puzzles and drinking. That is a major wound. In the case of the silent, passive, or absent fathers, the question goes unanswered. Do I have what it takes? Am I a man, Daddy? The silence is the answer. I don't know. I doubt it. You'll have to find out for yourself. Probably not. The assault wounds are usually obvious. Something is shouted. Something awful is done. The passive wounds are not obvious because they are subtle. They often go unrecognized as wounds and therefore are more difficult to heal. But the fact remains, most fathers find it hard to validate their children because they have a wound in their soul. Healing the wounds. This booklet is about how to love your sons and daughters. I want to help you offer what they need from you, but to love them well, to fight for their hearts, and to have to first get your heart back. When the Bible tells us that Christ came to redeem mankind, it means a whole lot more than forgiveness. Simply forgiving a broken man is like telling someone running a marathon, it's okay that you've broken your leg. I won't hold that against you. Now, finish the race. That is cruel to leave him wounded in that way. No, there is much more to salvation. The core of Christ's message was therefore foretold by Isaiah 61. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted and proclaim freedom for the captive and release for the prisoners. The Messiah will come, he said, to bind up and heal, to release and set free. What? Your heart? Christ comes to restore and release you. This is the central passage about Jesus in the entire Bible, the one he chose to quote about himself when he stepped into the spotlight and announced his arrival, Luke 4. This is what makes Christianity such really good news. God can and wants to heal your heart. How can you first find the healing of your wounded heart? It begins with surrender. You might remember the famous passage of scripture that goes like this. I stand at the door and knock, and if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in. Revelations 3:20. It is Jesus who is speaking and the door he refers to is the heart. He asks your permission to come in. How simple, yet how life-changing. You simply invite Jesus into your wound. You ask him to come and meet you there, to enter into the broken and unhealed places of your heart. That is the first step, to take him at his word and invite Christ in. Give him permission to heal all the broken places within you. Ask him to release you from all the bondage and captivity, as he promised to do. Next, you may find that you need to grieve. The wounds you received were not your fault, and they mattered. Oh, what a milestone day it was for me when I allowed myself to say that the loss of my father mattered. The tears that flowed were the first I'd ever granted my wound, and they were deeply healing. All those years of sucking it up melted away my grief. It is also important for each of us to grieve our wound. It is the only honest thing to do, for in grieving we admit the truth. We were hurt by someone we loved. We lost something very dear, and it hurt us very much. Tears are healing. They help to open and cleanse the wound. Then you let God love you, and you let him get real close to you. I know it seems painfully obvious, but I'm telling you, few men are ever so vulnerable as to simply let themselves be loved by God. I once asked a friend, Brad, why don't you just let God love you? He squirmed in his chair. I have such a hard time with that, just being loved. It feels so naked. I'd rather be in control. Later he wrote me this. After it all came crashing down, I was overwhelmed by sadness and grief. The pain is incredible. In the midst of that, God asked me, Brad, will you let me love you? I know what he is asking. I feel anxious that I need to go email all these schools and secure a future. But I'm tired of running away. I want to come home. I flipped through my Bible and came to John 15. Just as the Father has loved you, I also loved you. Abide in my love. The battle is very intense. At times it is all clear. At others, it is in a fog. Right now, all I can do is cling to Jesus as best as I know how, and not run from all this in my heart. Abiding in the love of God is our only hope, the only true home for our hearts. It's not that we mentally acknowledge that God loves us. It's that we let our hearts come home to him and stay in his love. That is what another man said to me after he opened the door to his heart to Christ. My father never left. He just never had time for me or words of encouragement. He has spent his entire life making himself the center of attention. For the first time, I understand why I am highly driven, why I never let anyone get close to me, including my wife, and why I am important to most people. I broke down and cried. I feel the presence of God in my heart like I've never felt him before, the beginning of a new heart. And next, you must forgive your father. Paul warned us that unforgiveness and bitterness can wreck our lives and the lives of others. Ephesians 4:31, Hebrews 12:15. I am sorry to think of all the years my wife endured the anger and bitterness I had redirected at her from my father. As someone has said, forgiveness is setting a prisoner free and then discovering the prisoner was you. You must understand that forgiveness is a choice. It is not a feeling, but an act of will. Neil Anderson has written, don't wait to forgive until you feel like forgiving. You will never get there. Feelings take time to heal, and the choice to forgive is, feelings take time to heal after the choice to forgive is made. You allow God to bring the hurt up from your past. For if your forgiveness doesn't visit the emotional core of your life, it will be incomplete. You acknowledge that it hurt, that it mattered, and you choose to extend forgiveness to your father. This is not saying it didn't really matter. It is not saying I probably deserve part of it anyway. Forgiveness says it was wrong, it mattered, and I release you. The last step is to ask God to ask God to father you and to tell you what he thinks of you. You see, no matter how old you are, no matter how much you have or have not achieved, you still have a question. Do you have what it takes? The only one who can really settle that for you is God. You must ask God, and you must stay with the question until you get an answer. How will it be possible to validate your son or daughter when you are walking around with a huge question mark on your chest, or worse, a gaping wound that screams failure, worthless, crybaby? Oh, what wonderful stories I could tell you of how many times God has spoken to me and to other men since we've been asking the question. My friend Aaron went to the park near our home and found a place of solitude. There he waited for the Father's voice. When he first heard, what he first heard was this: true masculinity is spiritual. Aaron has for so long felt that spirituality was feminine. It put him in a terrible bind because he is a very spiritual man and yet longs to be a real man. God spoke exactly what he needed to hear. Masculinity is spiritual. Then he heard true masculinity is good. And then you are a man. You are a man. You are a man. Remember, Scripture promises that the Father's voice is never condemning. There is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, Romans 8:1. Whatever he has to say to you, it will not involve reproach or rejection in any way. We are forgiven. God has given each of us a new heart. Excuse me, guys. And that is from Ezekiel 36:26, Luke 8:15, and Romans 2:29. That is what is true, period. From that place, we ask God to speak personally to us to break the power of the lie that was delivered with the wound. It is never too late. My father sent me a letter last year. It's a short letter, only about 4 sentences, just a note really. My dad was never long on words. He wrote it with the help of an old typewriter ever since his stroke a few years back. His handwriting has gotten too shaky to read. Now, to be honest, it's not a particularly moving letter. He's not an eloquent man. It simply says something to the effect of, I think you are doing a great job. I get a lot of letters because I'm an author. I probably receive more mail than the average guy. Over the years, people have written some really encouraging things to me, and I am very grateful. But this letter from my dad is one of the few letters I've ever saved. It's one of a handful that have brought me to tears. The reason is simple. All my life I long to know that I, too, have what it takes. And like every other boy, I've longed to hear those words from my dad. So at the age of 43, a man well past boyhood years, with my dad, a grey-haired grandfather passing 77, I hang on to those few words from him. The truth is, no matter how old your children are, they will always long to hear from you those words so central to their hearts. You are lovely. You have what it takes. I know. Reading this little booklet has been hard for some of you. You see now that you didn't speak those words of life to your children. Maybe worse, maybe you wounded them instead. That's a hard thing to admit, but you need to know that it isn't too late. You can still try to recover your relationship. You can still offer those words of life to them. Let me try to give you some counsel on how to approach older children, high school age and above. Go to them. Ask them what it was like to have you as a father. Ask them what they feel your message to them was while they were growing up. Maybe it needs to start with a letter or a phone call. I've been doing some thinking about our relationship and how I might have hurt you over the years. I'd be honored if you could tell me what it was like to have me as a dad. What was my message to you about you as you grew up? Did you feel loved or pursued by me as a daughter? Did you feel loved and respected by me as a son? Now, if you are blessed by God, they will tell you. It might be hard to hear, but you're a man. You can take it. Don't be quick to defend yourself. Don't rush to explain. But those were hard years, or I was working hard to provide for you, or whatever. Simply listen, let them speak, and then accept what they have to say. Only after the story is out on the table do you ask for their forgiveness. This is important. Don't just say you're sorry. Ask for their forgiveness. You're right. I really see that now. Will you forgive me for wounding you in that way? However, I need to admit that sometimes this might not go well. Your adult children might not be ready to talk to you about all of this. Respect them, give them time, let them know that when they are ready, you are ready. Pray for them that God would soften their hearts and bring reconciliation. Either way, and most important of all, begin to say to your children what you never said to them. Demonstrate your repentance. Show them you mean what you say. Begin to speak loving, affirming words to their question. Send them cards, ask them for dinner, shoot off a quick email. Not just once, but hundreds of times over the next few years. Tell them you have what it takes, or you are lovely. It is never too late. The power of love. I know that I've blown it with my sons more times than I want to admit. I know that I've hurt them and will hurt them again before this whole thing is over. I am a man under construction, undergoing renovation, and sometimes the uglier parts of me slip out. Jesus is not finished with me yet. I will never be the perfect dad, but here is what I'm counting on. Love comes over a multitude. Love covers over a multitude of sins. 1 Peter 4:8. I really want to do a great job as a dad, but I know I will not do it perfectly. Sometimes I'm just too tired to offer what they need. Other times I'm just plain selfish. So this verse is what I'm banking on more than anything else as a father. In the end, the most important issue is love. It always has been, always will be. More than anything else, your son and daughter long to know that you love them, truly love them, that you delight in them. It's really the core desire of any human heart. You might remember that day when Jesus was baptized by his cousin John, and as he came back out of the water, God the Father spoke, I mean literally out loud so everyone could hear. He did that only 3 times in the entire life of Christ, so it must have been an important moment. What did the Father have to say? This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Matthew 3:17. In other words, Jesus, you are my delight. I am so very proud of you. You have what it takes. God the Father expressed his delight in his Son. This is just amazing. There's our model. There's the basic message that we too are meant to give to our children. I delight in you. Somehow, when a child is secure in that love, the wounds just don't go quite as deep, and the lesser failings are more easily forgotten. This is the most basic of all missions, the fundamental assignment of our lives, to make sure our children know that we love them, to say to each son, I'm so proud of you, you have what it takes, to let your daughter know how I delight in you, you are lovely. If we get that said, and said 1,000 different ways over the course of their childhoods, we'll have done a pretty good job being dads. Every dad can offer this, but only you can offer this as a father to your children. You are the man. You have what it takes. If you want more. This booklet was drawn from some key ideas in a book I wrote titled Wild at Heart, Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul. If anything I've said here has touched a nerve, awakened you to the weight of your life, I really want to encourage you to get a fuller understanding by reading Wild at Heart for yourself. You might also find it helpful to have alongside the Wild at Heart manual, a sort of workbook I wrote to help men bring some deep truths into their own hearts and discover the healing and the validation God has for them. My prayer is that your heart would be restored, and having found that from God, you would be able to offer it to those you love. So this was from John Eldredge. John Eldredge is the author of numerous books, including The Way of the Wild Heart, Epic, Waking the Dead, Wild at Heart, The Journey of Desire, and co-authoring Captivating and the Sacred Romance. John, his wife Stacy, and their 3 sons live in Colorado, where they pursue adventure in the mountains, the woods, and on the rivers. He is also the founder of Ransomed Heart, now known as Wild at Heart, helping men and women discover the heart of God. So this is John Eldredge's You Have What It Takes. There was some tough language in this. I understand that there's some challenging words. I read it as written by the author because that's the abuse a lot of us heard. And so if there was any offense taken by any of the words that I've used out of this, it was recounting what men have perceived as abuse, and it is horrific. I remember my own father was incapable. He was there every night. He never went to the pub. He wasn't a drunk. He provided. But his own father hadn't answered this for him, and he wasn't able to answer it for me. I remember a distinct memory that I'd learned to do a dive, a backflip off the top tower of the swimming pools, 4 stories high. And it was a huge achievement. I was terrified when I did it, and I nailed it. My father was the one who would pick us up on this night at the pool from swimming training. And I ran all the way out, this tubby little kid, and sort of said, Dad, can you watch this? And I ran all the way back in and went all the way up, and I did the jump. And when I got back in the car, just thinking, man, did you see that? And, my father was unable to acknowledge it. He just said, yeah, I did. And next time, keep your legs straighter. And we drove off. And I was crushed, just crushed. I now know as an adult man what it's like. He would have drove home in an unair-conditioned car in summer, an hour. He started work, left at 5 a.m., got home about 5 p.m. Long day, mentally ill wife. I've got compassion for him now, but that boy, it mattered. It really mattered. And I got 3 boys under 9. Man, I'm in my heart now. I've done Wild at Heart. I still wear my tag and the cross I got when John actually baptized me after my Wild at Heart experience. And man, I tell him every day. I can't help but telling him. Because I'm present, I see stuff. I'm amazed how smart they are and how courageous they are. And they've just say 1,000 times a day, we went skateboarding today and there's always a new trick. Dad, 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 watch this, watch this. And I'm grateful. I want to give them that experience. So guys, this is day 9, MOvember. It's for men's health. This is why I do it. If you've listened this far into this video, that's amazing. I just sit in this room and rave to myself. My wife's probably even gone to bed now. We usually watch a bit of TV after work. I just had it on my heart to share this tonight. So remember, be gentle with your heart. Get the support you need. Please reach out. If you're a man or you know one, please get them to reach out. There is other men that are there for you, and contact me through my counselling service or reach out for Men's Line, Lifeline, any line you can, and get your own heart back so you can give it to the people you love. With that, I'll see you tomorrow for video number 10.